You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on Pitch Talks, a UK top 4 careers podcast, focused on giving you exclusive how-to guides to help you understand what it takes to land your dream role in sport. Today, myself and Sam are super excited to introduce to you Ade Oladipo, someone I know personally we have wanted on our podcast since we started, to hear about his experiences working within sports reporting and broadcasting, and how working as freelance has given him the incredible opportunities to witness some of the best sporting moments and meet idols that we watch on our screens. So remember, if you have any questions about working in sport or need some advice, make sure you get in touch on any of our social media platforms or drop us an email at mitch@pitch-talks.com. So that's enough from me. Let's get to it.
This is Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
Ade, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. So I appreciate you joining us. And like we were saying, especially one of the busiest times of the sporting calendar with the Euros alive and kicking and so many other tournaments on the horizon. How are you?
I'm good. Look, firstly, thanks for having me on. It really is a privilege to be on. You say you wanted me on. It's funny because I've seen Anne-Marie Batson do this. I'm like, okay, when's my turn coming up? What's going on? So I feel the opposite way. It's good to come on as well. You're right. Look, it's a busy time in the broadcast world. I think this is what we broadcast or journalists, whatever you want to kind of give us the title as, this is what we look forward to. It's not just the Euros. We've obviously got Wimbledon coming up. So much stuff, Olympics coming up. So there's always big events in boxing as well. Rugby fans are excited about the British and Irish Lions tour in South Africa. So it's busy, which is a good thing, right? If your phone isn't ringing now as a broadcaster, that's when it gets scary. You want to be busy now. If honestly, if there's no dial tone on your phone, that's when you should start panicking around now, because you should be busy as a broadcaster right now.
And that's as fans, if you're not glued to in front of your TV, then there's something not right. Before we get on to, as you were saying, how busy you are and the stuff you're doing right now, let's start from when you were early age. What was it about sport that instantly appealed to you as a career choice and something you wanted to be involved in?
It's funny because it was a career choice very later in life. Initially, just as a sports fan, I've always loved sports. As a kid growing up, I loved football like most people, right, in this country, football, athletics, basketball. And when my dad was alive, he's passed now, but when my dad was alive, as an adult looking back, those moments with my dad sort of glued to the TV watching Steve Davis and snooker and Phil Taylor and Eric Bristow in darts, those are the moments I shared with my dad. So I think sport for me was always a case of, okay, that's son and dad moment, watching it. Growing up as well, there was Grandstand on BBC One. So it was like 7 hours of continued sport, something we don't really see on terrestrial TV anymore. So for me, the moments of enjoying sport were for those moments. And then as a kid playing it, I was never good enough to kind of take it to the next level and play it professionally, but this was the second best thing, right? Being a broadcaster and talking about it. So I never, at a young age, thought about a career in broadcasting. It was almost just because I love sport. I love tennis. And I think that was the key for me as well. I love so many different sports. I would watch sport if I could 24 hours a day. And I think that now, looking back, makes sense as to why I do what I do. But growing up, I never really looked at it as a career.
I think what you've said there will probably reminisce with quite a lot of people who just love sport. So when they're trying to start their journey into sports industry, whether it be broadcasting or another specialism, sports media always seems to be one of the most popular specialist careers area, but often not many people know where to start. In terms of yourself, how and where did your career begin to start your journey that you've, done so successfully in now?
My career path is so random and probably going to be unlike anyone you're going to hear ever on Pitch Talks. So I was working at Islington Council up until 6.5 years ago. So I was just, taking calls on council tax. So to go back a few more years, I don't have a degree in journalism or anything like that. I didn't study it in college either. And I don't say this as bragging, because I think everyone should if you can go that route. But I flunked my A-levels. I did A-levels in IT, economics and accounts, and I kind of messed up, and I was almost in the route of, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing here. So I then sort of took on various roles in the workforce. I was in sales. I worked for William Hill in a betting shop. And then I kind of found myself in Islington Council as a housing officer, but I was taking calls on council tax, on parking. And then at the time, me and my friend who loved boxing, who I met at Islington Council, we started a YouTube channel years ago. I'd say about 6-7 years ago, called Box Talk. And that was just two friends sitting down talking boxing. That's all it was. I didn't intend it to do any more than it did. It's just a case of, okay, let's just put ourselves out there and just talk. 6 years ago, probably around to this day, actually, a company called Arise News somehow got wind of it and found us, and they reached out to me by email and said, okay, look, I saw you on this channel called Box Talk. Floyd Mayweather's having a fight. If you could come to our office in central London and talk about boxing. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I remember they said, no, seriously, we'd love you to come down and, we'll send you an Addison Lee. And I laughed now because that was a big thing for me, for them to say, okay, we want to send you a taxi. So they sent me a taxi. I went there and I spoke about Floyd Mayweather. And I remember the producer at the time coming out of the studio after I'd spoken to a girl called Samantha Johnson, who works for TRT World now, another big broadcaster. I remember speaking to her, and the producer said, you're pretty good. You could do this. And all I remember thinking at the time was, okay, I'm late for work. I need to get back to Islington Council ASAP or I'm in trouble. And they sent me and Addison Lee back to Islington Council. I remember my lunchtime, I was about 10 minutes over my lunch break and I got in trouble. That's where I started in this media world. That's how I started in this broadcasting world. So there is nothing else in the background. I'd love to come on and to you guys and say, okay, there's this and that in the background. There really isn't. And that's it. Arise News then said, okay, look, there's an opportunity for you to almost be a second seat in the studio. We can't pay you, but if you don't mind coming down twice a week on a Thursday and a Tuesday at 7:00 to talk other sports with us, we'd appreciate it. And that's it. That's how I started in this media world. So that's my journey, which is very, very random.
I think it's great hearing those experiences because that kind of touched upon quite a lot of episodes that we have spoken with before, like James Green, for instance. He went back to an education side of things. I know that's someone that you work with quite closely on Sky Sports News, and he touched upon, getting different experience and then going back to uni. So it's good to hear that those people who are listening, who are perhaps looking to pursue a career, whether it be sports broadcasting or something else, you don't necessarily have had to study from an early age to get to where you want to be.
You're listening to Pitch Talks.
Just touching on then your YouTube Boxing Talk, you've got over 26,000 subscribers. Would you say it's been the catalyst for boosting your career in presenting? And would you encourage others to do something similar, whether it be a YouTube channel or content creation, just to kind of get yourself out there, let your presence known and build your personal brand?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I've done, I don't know how many hundreds, might have been 1,000 videos now on the YouTube channel. And I read quite a lot, and there's a book on my shelf right here to my left, and it's by Malcolm Gladwell, and he talks about sort of doing something for 10,000 hours, right? Then to become quote unquote an expert at it. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I've definitely surpassed 10,000 hours of talking to my Samsung phone. So there is no fancy digital camera, just a Samsung phone that I put in front of me and talk. And I think that's given me the confidence to, when I do go to Sky or anywhere else I've done, Fox Sports, I've got that confidence of having that kind of one-on-one with a camera and messing up and be able to record and delete and being comfortable at messing up, right? Because you're in your own environment. And so I think anyone that's out there that wants to get into broadcasting, you've got all the tools in front of you. Everyone right now has a smartphone of some type, right? A tripod is very cheap. You can get so many plug-in mics just to go yourself. And I would never have had the confidence, especially going to Sky, where there have been times that I've kind of felt like I'm under pressure, to have been able to overcome those nerves without having that kind of YouTube experience to fall back on, and that experience of completely going back and forth and talking to myself on my smartphone time and time again. I mean, as you say, it's a 27,000 subscribers now, which is crazy. But I remember when it was one subscriber. I remember when I'd put out a video and get 5 views and 10 views, and you just got to keep on going. And not only that, but you've got to know where you start, why you're starting it as well. I think, I speak to a lot of people that start YouTube channels, and, they're already looking at the likes of AFTV, and they want that success and those riches and those millions. I mean, it doesn't work like that. You really have to start from ground zero and kind of check your ego at the door and understand what you're doing it for. At the time, I was doing it because I wanted to almost get more talking experience to then eventually, when I do go to the big broadcasters, I've got that confidence. It wasn't for a money aspect or a subscriber aspect. It was just to get minutes on the pitch, right? And I think the YouTube has given me that.
Quite powerful on a personal level there for me and Mitch, that because obviously you've had this success with a fantastic product that is your YouTube channel, and it kind of feels like we're, maybe 6 years behind where you are now, that this is a potential option for us. But I wanted to touch on sort of a couple of roles that you have done in your career, and sort of dive into some of your favorite moments that you've witnessed from a sporting aspect, or even anything that you sort of think back to as to that was one of my greatest achievements.
Yeah, I think I'll give you a journey kind of story. So I left the country in 2016. Yeah, I left England in 2016, and me and my ex-partner at the time went back to Nigeria. So I just started to kind of make a bit of noise over here. I'd done a Rise News and I'd done London Live, and I was like, starting to get a bit ahead of myself, thinking, okay, something big's coming. Just like, no, it's not coming, basically. She's like, why don't we go back to Africa, where there's an opportunity for you maybe to get some work out there, because it is going to be difficult without a degree or anything like that to go and get the big boys, the Sky Sports and talkSPORT. So I went to Africa, and I remember being in Africa, and I kind of fast forward it now, but I remember Fox Sports reached out to me whilst I was in South Africa. And I remember just thinking, how the hell have I gone from Islington Council to Fox Sports? Like, what is going on? I remember they reached out to me, and I remember they asked if I could do something for them, and I did it. And I done it with El Hadji Diouf, that used to play for Liverpool. I done it in Senegal. So sorry, I done it in South Africa, but with the Senegalese players. And I remember thinking, this is just incredible. And that's when I realized nothing beats hard work and grinding. I mean, all the degrees and all the experience in the world is very, very good. And don't let me try and put that down, because it's not, but it's very, very good. But nothing beats sort of just grinding. And I remember once I got Fox Sports, I think that's when I felt, okay, we've arrived. Like, okay, we're here now. And we can actually take this on as a career, because growing up and, watching American channels and seeing ESPN and Fox Sports, it was almost like that's never going to happen. So when they reached out and called me, I would have done it for free. I mean, I would have paid them to do it. So to get paid to do it as well was even more incredible. But look, Fox Sports was definitely the time when I felt like we're here. We've arrived, and we're good now. We can actually take this on as a career. That's the first time I've actually felt like, okay, this is now a career and not just the odd gig here and there.
That's a fascinating story, and yeah, the whole, I'll pay you to do it. So getting paid for it is obviously always a big old plus. Just to sort of go back again to sort of the various roles that you've had. You've worked in sort of a lot of different sports, but mainly, correct me if I'm wrong, mainly it is football and boxing.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest difference between the two, and how easy do you find it to transition between talking about boxing and talking about football? And is there any different levels of preparation involved?
Yeah, look, football's the hardest. There's no two ways about it. Boxing is still, it's very much a niche sport still. It still has its numbers. I mean, but it's only for a big fight. You can only compare like a big Anthony Joshua fight to a Premier League event, right? And not only that, but football, everyone's an expert on football in the country. Everyone thinks they knows every single thing about football. So you almost feel like you have to prepare a lot more to know a bit more than the average person on social media. And because, not only that, but I feel like you'd also get found out in football as well. I think there are so many people in this country that are experts at football. If you do not know your football, you'll get found out. There aren't that many experts in boxing. You really could make a mistake in boxing, and no one's going to pull you up on it because they actually don't know either. But football, there is a lot more. I felt moving into the football industry that my football knowledge was actually quite good. Then I realized it was actually rubbish, and I only knew about the top 10 teams in the Premier League, a couple in France, a couple in Serie A, and a couple in La Liga. That was it. I think I've had to kind of expand that knowledge so much now to not just know about the Premier League, but to know about the Championship, League One, League Two, the Bundesliga, La Liga. You need to know so much. So my preparation for a football gig it's vast. I mean, and to be fair, I'm more of a listener, so I listen to people's podcasts and get information like that. I've never been a kind of write and jot stuff down. I listen to people's podcasts, take that away, and then use that as a reference point. I feel like I'm still learning it. I feel like there's always stuff you're going to learn, but football's so much harder than boxing. So much. Boxing really, for me, is almost second nature now. Maybe because I watch it a lot more, but I find boxing quite easy. I find football quite difficult. I had to, for TalkSport the other day, research about North Macedonia. I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about North Macedonia. I knew very little about just not only their play, I knew very little about their country. And that's what I'm talking about. So football really is a lot more difficult.
I think the only thing I know about North Macedonia was Goran Pandev, and I was as shocked as most people that he's still playing, because he looked like he was mid-40s back in 2010 when he played for Inter Milan in the Champions League final. So the fact that he was still playing, I was shocked at.
This is Pitch Talks.
You mentioned there about the techniques about comparing when you're running your own YouTube channel and then when you're, say, like on air for radio. And in terms of this whole preparation, what is the main difference when you're presenting a YouTube channel and when you find yourself on, say, Sky Sports News? Because obviously, I suppose with something like Sky Sports News, it's quite reactive. It's quite, you're bouncing off one presenter to another to form a conversation that's engaging. But then YouTube, you obviously have a lot more time to prepare and you can stop, edit, cut, redo. Whereas when you're live, it's completely different.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, and if I'm honest, I've spoken to so many presenters about this, and if anyone comes in here and says different, they're lying. I think the biggest thing is fear. Is that fear of making a mistake when you are on Sky Sports or any other of the big networks. There is a genuine fear. And it's funny because I spoke to Adrian Durham about this the other day. And look, I think Adrian Durham is one of the best in the business. In fact, I think he is the best in the business, especially when it comes to TalkSport. And I was like, dude, you're ridiculously good. And he was like, what? He was shocked that I was giving him that praise because he said he has so much fear when doing it. And I was like, well, you clearly aren't showing it because it's so smooth. So I think we all have the fear of making a mistake. I mean, unfortunately, with social media, there are some good and some bad. And I think social media is this place where if you do make a mistake now, you'll be found out immediately about it because the people on social media will tell you about your mistake 1,000 times as well. So I think there is that. I think the YouTube, I just have a freedom to be exactly who I am. I mean, I can pretty much say what I want. If I make a mistake, it's my own channel. I've made a mistake. So what? So you're a lot more comfortable as well. I think with the preparation for Sky are very, very strict on making sure that everything is absolutely 100% perfect. Like we do the transfer shows and they start at 10. We have to get in at 6 to prep for that. And they want to make sure that you are fully on board with absolutely everything. I mean, if a guy scored 18 goals and you say he scored 16, that's a problem. And I don't actually necessarily think that's good for me. I think you should be okay and able to make mistakes. We're human. We talk by, we make mistakes in talking. So I think the broadcasters, it's just the pressure of it, if I'm honest with you. That's all it is. I don't think there's much difference. And I do think people on their YouTube channels are a bit more laid back, a bit more comfortable. And I actually think that brings out the best in you as well. So I think that's the only real difference.
Does the preparation differ between preparing for radio and for TalkSport and then for Sky Sports News, but actually physically being on screen? And how much of the sort of the notes can you have there with you in front of you on, say, TalkSport versus Sky Sports News?
Oh yeah, no, TalkSport, it's fantastic because you can have so much notes. Although TalkSport is getting to a stage where they are starting to video it as well now and put it on YouTube. So they don't want you to refer to your notes and or your laptop all the time, but they do give you that kind of. I think the thing, especially with TalkSport, is like I've got into the TalkSport building. Like I could go in at 8 o'clock in the morning and they could say, Ade, okay, we've got this basketball player from America who's ready to interview, but you can only do it in 30 minutes. A, I know very little about basketball, and I'm like, B, you didn't tell me yesterday. So I think in that instance, you've got your laptop open, you've got Google ready, and you're going back and forth with facts. And even that's a skill in itself, but I think they allow you to do that. Whereas a Sky, obviously, very little papers in front of you. Yes, you are allowed your laptop, but they don't want you to continually look down at your laptop. It's very much from the top of your head and what you've done and all the prep you've done the couple of days leading up to it. So Sky is very more strict than TalkSport is. But look, you still have to prep for your TalkSport shows as well. I mean, even me as a broadcaster, I don't want to be referring to Google all the time. I want to have done a good 2-3 days prep on a special guest. But the fact that you can have Google open, you can have notes in front of you, does help because, again, look, I'm interviewing 6-7 different people a day on TalkSport, and it's difficult to remember every single fact about everyone. So I think to have a couple of notes in front of you as reference points is always good. But TalkSport is a lot more lenient, way more lenient than Sky when it comes to it. I remember we have our laptops open for the transfer show on Sky, and you have a director and a producer in one ear and the other, and they are telling you, Ade, you're looking down too much. like, let's stop looking down. And I'm like, oh, I don't know too much about this guy from Belgium. I've got to look down or I'm going to make a mistake. So look, they understand it. But again, for me with Sky as well, Sky's the Mount Rushmore in this country. It's like the number one. So you shouldn't have to refer to your notes that good. If you've got on Sky, you should be good enough to kind of go off the top of your dome to even be at Sky. But just in case, I will have my laptop open 100 times a week. Absolutely.
Obviously helps when it's got battery or got enough battery to last the show. Which
Hey.
you obviously used your YouTube practice to play that one off very well when it did unfortunately die during the show, because you did it did not show
moment.
at all.
Scariest moment ever. I remember like thinking this can't be happening. I remember actually there's a girl who presents now called Emma Patton, fantastic presenter. And I remember looking at her and saying, Emma, my battery, and it was Sky laptops as well. Like, we all know when our laptop's battery's rubbish, right? We're going to keep it plugged in. I remember telling her, this laptop's got 27%. And she's like, oh no, that's fine. I then remember looking at her saying, oh my God, it's at 7. It's at 7% and I'm done. First day at Sky. So I just remember thinking, okay, quickly go over all your notes as quickly as humanly possible, which I did. But thank God we had Tom White, who's such a good presenter, and he kind of made a joke out of it. Because I was thinking, I'm done. I think, how do I play this off? But it's weird how that moment kind of led me to get other work, because it kind of went viral, and then CNN saw it, and then talkSPORT saw it, and look, it's just weird how the world works. How then I got other jobs. But yeah, that was a ridiculously scary moment. Ridiculous.
I was going to say, I think you pulled it off quite well till Tom White sort of threw you under the bus and mentioned that your laptop had died.
Yeah, this is it, because it's weird because I didn't know Tom properly. Like, that was my first time really seeing Tom. So I didn't know what kind of character he was. So I didn't know if he was going to be very strict, because obviously Sky's quite strict, and kind of play it serious and pretend it hadn't happened, or he was going to do that. So I was just thinking the latter, the worst, that he's going to be very strict. So, okay, if they come to you with a question, don't mess up. You can't say, oh guys, sorry, my laptop's died, I'm live on air. You've just got to keep going with it, until he done that joke. And I was like, thank God. Thank you, Lord.
You're listening to Pitch Talks, bringing you the game.
So on this episode so far, we've covered Ade's earlier motivations for getting into sport and some of the incredible experiences you've witnessed. But one topic I'd really like your expertise on is freelance work. So as you mentioned at the very, very start, we've spoken to Anne-Marie, who works on her own freelance brand, which is doing sensationally well. But I want to talk about how the opportunities have presented themselves to you. So just to name some of the freelance stuff that you've done in the past or currently doing, as we mentioned, you've got your YouTube channel, Boxing Talk, boxing commentator for ESPN, on-air hosting for talkSPORT 2, and then obviously Sky Sports news reporter. Where and how do you even begin to establish yourself as someone that these major broadcasting brands can work with on a freelance basis? Are they opportunities that they present or market, or are they just get in touch with you like Fox Sport did when you were in Africa?
It's a bit of both, really. One thing I have realized in this industry is that if someone works for ITV, later on down the line, they're going to work for CNN, they're going to work for Fox, so most heads of productions or producers actually are freelance as well, and they go everywhere. And almost by default, they will call people that done a good job for them in somewhere else. A good example is I remember working with Samantha Johnson at Arise News, one of my first ever jobs. It was my first ever job. She then went and got a job at TRT World in Turkey. And getting the job, they were looking for someone that knew boxing. She was like, okay, 1 second, I know Ade who knows boxing. So it worked like that. And the same thing with someone at Sky that eventually went to talkSPORT. So it kind of works like that, where everyone in the industry seems to hop around as a freelancer. They do what we do. So freelance presenters are also the same as freelance producers or production heads of production. So they will go all around all the broadcasters, and they eventually do take you with you. But one big thing for me when I first started out was LinkedIn. I mean, I don't see enough of sort of aspiring presenters really put their stuff on LinkedIn. I put every single time I done something for someone of note. So when I done something for ESPN, I immediately clipped it up, put it on LinkedIn, put a little clip out, done that. I done exactly the same thing with Fox, put it on LinkedIn. And a lot of them companies that you're mentioning, so CNN then saw that clip, they reached out to me. So I do some stuff for CNN right now. that clip that went viral with my laptop, I put that up, and then talkSPORT then reached out and said, okay, we saw you. Can you come and do? So I think a lot of people now, presenters, don't put enough of their work out on these platforms. These platforms are there and they're free, right? I mean, yes, there are paid for versions, but you don't need them. Use the free versions. Put your stuff out there. Put your stuff out there on Twitter. Put your stuff out there on Instagram. We've got all this free media to use, and no one wants to use it. So for me, that was the key for me, is always putting my stuff out there, but always making an impression with the producers, the execs that are there, because I know they are also freelance and they will also go elsewhere. And fingers crossed, if I do well, they're going to drag me with them. So that was always my thing. And another thing, though, is that I was happy to travel. I think a lot of people want work over here and are fixated about working for Sky, for Channel 4, BBC over here. I was always like, wait 1 second, I will go anywhere. I mean, I will go anywhere. I've been to probably 60 different countries in Africa. I've touched most of Africa, just for companies that are willing to pay me to work. And I wasn't afraid to go as well. There's been some instances, and this might sound a bit crazy, where I've actually paid my travel to get there. This is a bit crazy, because I know that I was going to make a bit of money, and I wanted that experience of being in there as well. So I wanted that experience of working in that terrain. So as long as I'm not making a loss, I wasn't that bothered about making a huge profit just to get there. I remember when I was working for a company called Kwesi in South Africa, the deal was that I was working for them I was living in Nigeria, and they would fly me from Nigeria to South Africa. When I moved back to London, that deal stopped. So I had to pay myself to fly to South Africa to continue to do that work, which I did. I was happy to pay my own tickets. Yes, I would stop off in about 100 different countries to make it cheap to get there, but I did that just to kind of make sure I continue to get that work. So don't be afraid of taking opportunities out of the country. That experience of working in harder terrains will serve you well when you come back to England, which is a lot easier.
You've actually very nicely linked on to my next question, which was sort of around the differences in work culture and actually just sort of the experiences that you have had working in all of those different countries, and whether you had a favorite specifically, you know, any of those countries that you have worked in that you think, yeah, that was because of the experiences, or whether it was the location, whether one that sort of sticks out as your favorite place to work.
I'd say my favorite is probably also my toughest. It's almost like when you get that tough assignment and you nail it, and then there's that feeling of like, oh yes, you go back to the hotel and you're like, oh wow. But the initial kind of build up to it is almost like, well, this is going to be difficult. So we as Kwesi, we always used to go to Zimbabwe, and that's always tough for a number of different reasons. Politically, it's quite tough. They wouldn't want cameras into the country, so we would know as soon as we get to the airport, the work starts there, just to almost even get through the borders. It starts, and then you go to the venue and nothing's correct. I mean, the lighting's awful. The mics aren't great. The live crossovers are a bit shaky. And you're thinking, if somehow we get through this, and we all deserve a pint after. So sometimes it's getting through those tough ones, like Zimbabwe. So then I'll do like that there. And then you'd come back to England with Sky and think, this is just so easy. Like, it's just, what is this? So it makes it easier, right? Those tough assignments in Africa. So Zimbabwe, Ghana, Senegal, Namibia, so difficult. The language barrier was difficult as well. So I feel like those experiences over there have kind of just made me feel like working here, not that it's easy, but it's definitely easier. So there is an A experience. I think it's the whole of the Africa experience for me, which I did for 2 years, which is standing me in good stead here. I will talk about one difficult experience though that I had. There was an event in Carnival City, South Africa. So it's almost like their O2 arena. It's a big boxing event. And a fighter died in the ring when I was commentating. So actually, no, tell a lie, he didn't die in the ring, but he collapsed in the ring, then died backstage. But I knew something was wrong when I was commentating, that, okay, this is something serious. And it's funny, and I think about this now because of what happened with Christian Eriksen and how the broadcasters had to deal with it. And I remember having to kind of still commentate with it. So we didn't chuck it to a break or something. So you're trying to talk through it. And then I remember catching his wife's eye ringside and what she was going through. And I remember thinking, this is as tough as it gets, right? There's no tougher experience than this, surely not. And also remember thinking, how is this even a sport? Like when someone's been hit in the head a couple of times and he's going to collapse and die. So he went backstage and he did die, and we kind of got wind of what was going on through sort of, you can hear the whispers in the crowd. It's weird how it kind of just travels through to you. And then I still had to commentate, and you still have to give as much energy and enthusiasm. But I've known that someone just died in the ring. So that was very difficult. And so experiences like that, I think, have helped me over the years. But that one, I'm probably never going to forget as an experience. And it made me question boxing and why I love the sport, and should it continue and should it be banned? But yeah, that was a very difficult experience.
I mean, like you just touched upon there, it just happened the other day with Christian Eriksen, and you can hear the broadcast. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the game. It doesn't matter how much planning. You can never foresee a situation like that. And you really got to come into your own, haven't you, to kind of keep the conversation going, keep fans gripped and into the game. And
there's no prep for it. There's no preparation for it. Like we try and, like you say, when I get to Sky 4 or 5 hours earlier before the show, you prep for everything apart from something like that. There is no prep for things like that. So you're almost just a case of all your experience over the years, just to kind of think of something, say something. And it kind of refers back to what I was talking about at the start, that 10,000 hours, of just, that's the experience that money can't buy. That experience of, okay, just say something and just keep on talking. Like the worst thing you can do is just go silent. As much as that's what you want to do, right? Because your mouth's aghast with, oh my God, you still have to remain a broadcaster. And I think, that experience for me was a strange one. Because I remember going back to the hotel thinking, don't ever want to do this anymore. Like this is, that's not fun. That's not fun at all. And I got into sport because, like a kid, because of the fun side of it, nothing else. So yeah, that was a bit tough.
We discussed near the beginning of this episode that your journey on making it into such a competitive job role, and some of the advice that you would give to those people looking to embark on a similar journey. So to wrap up, what final career advice would you give to aspiring sports commentators, reporters, content creators, or anyone that's just looking to get into something that they've loved from an early age?
I think first and foremost, love the sport you're following, right? I mean, if you do want to get into a broadcaster as a football journalist, love football, like really love it with a passion. I mean, I love boxing. I would do what I do for my YouTube channel for free. You don't have to pay me a dime to do it. I'd go to boxing events. I used to turn up outside boxing events with a camera and try and just get a sneaky interview of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. I remember those things like they were yesterday. You've got to have a passion for sports, not necessarily a passion for broadcasting, but a passion for sports, because your passion for sports will get you in the door. And then your skill as a broadcaster will make you stay in the door, so to speak. Don't be afraid of doing some free work. I think there's a stigma about doing free work now because, is it free labor? It's okay with doing a bit of free work. We've all done work experience somewhere. And I think some people hate the idea of doing free work because, no, I should be paid for my services. You will eventually get paid for your services, but you can't beat a bit of experience in doing something. Approach local radio stations, broadcasting stations, and even newspapers. There is so much work available in these local stations. I think everyone at the start, and I understand it, trust me, I do, wants to go for the big boys. I get it. I was lucky enough to go to London Live, small channel, Arise News, small channel. You can get so much experience working for these smaller channels that, yes, they might not pay the same amount as the big broadcaster, but they will get you in the door. They will get you in the door, and then eventually you work your way up. I think a lot of people want to jump before they can walk, and there's no reason to. Be okay with going abroad. It sounds crazy, but I know so many broadcasters now that have worked abroad and are happy to do it, just because it's a different experience. It's a different terrain. Things are done differently. And that can only stand you in good stead when you come back here. It's so different working abroad than it is in this country. Everything they do is different, a different voice in your ear, a different way in which they produce shows. So don't be afraid of doing that as well. Don't worry about not having a degree in journalism or degree in English language or degree in English literature. I think everyone thinks like, okay, we need to rubber stamp those things. You don't. I mean, not just me, but there's so many other people that live in proof that even if you don't have those things, you can still get into the broadcast world. It very much is possible. And always reach out for advice. I'm lucky. I've got a couple of mentors. I've got Darren Lewis, assistant editor of The Mirror, who I reach out to all the time to speak to, and he gives me great advice. I've got Mike Wedderburn that I reach out to as well. I've got so many of these people that I'm okay to kind of put my ego at the door and say, okay, I know nothing about this industry. Like, can I follow your path? And they're always good for advice as well. So look, it's a wonderful industry to get into. It's a ridiculously competitive industry to get into, but there are so many ways to get into it. There's so many avenues now to get into it as well. I mean, start a YouTube, start a podcast, do everything you can do to kind of make your way in it before you are eventually in it. And look, reach out to someone like me for advice. I'm so happy to give people advice, by the way. I mean, I don't know if you can leave my contact details somehow for people on here to kind of reach out to me, but I'm more than happy to help people, because when I was coming up, people helped me. And I think without that, it's kind of difficult to get in this industry. But once you're in, it's fun. I'm having the time of my life going to some of the biggest events for free. It's ridiculous. I'm going to England, Scotland on Friday. Well, I don't know when it's going to come out. Apologies. But I'm going to England, Scotland at the Euros. I've covered some of the biggest Anthony Joshua fights in Saudi Arabia and America. And I have to go back to my hotel sometimes. And I'll be honest with you, this is probably a bit sad here, but sometimes I do shed a tear. Like how like this is incredible. Like how have I got to the point where I'm covering some of the biggest sporting events in the world? It's crazy. And then I kind of say, well, no, you put the work in as well. So it's a bit of a dream right now, and I'm still living it. And I'm excited to live it. And when you guys asked me to come, it's like, what, you want me? Ade? It's unbelievable. So thanks for having me on.
No, I tell you what, it's been our absolute pleasure. And our listeners have probably got so much insight and tips and knowledge to kickstart our own careers, for their careers. And yeah, just being able to, you telling us how you establish yourself in freelancing and the power of content creating. All I can say is thank you so much, Ade. It's been an incredible episode. And it's been just fantastic just being able to meet you and speak with you.
Thank you, guys. Honestly, thank you so much. And look, wish both of you good luck in your broadcast careers as well. I mean, look, if I can bloody make it to Sky from the council, I mean, come on, guys. Come on, eh? You guys can definitely get there. So, come on. I mean, come on. Right? It's ridiculous. So, look, we can all do it. Honestly, when I was at Islington Council, looking at the time, and it was 4:59, thinking 5 o'clock can't come any sooner. If anyone was going to tell me then, and that was that. When did I leave Islington? I left Islington. It'll be 5 years in July, or 6 years in July. That I would be somehow on Sky Sports News or talkSPORT with my own show. I'd have said you're crazy and lock you up. So yeah, it's been a crazy journey. It really has. And one that I feel like I'm just getting started at right now. Like I'm just like we've not even hit anything yet. I expect to do so much more stuff in the next sort of 2-3 years. So many plans, not just for broadcasting, but for my own YouTube channel as well. So look, we just got started.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck with that. For those that are interested in boxing, then make sure you check out Ade's YouTube channel for sure. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, there are so many more episodes to get stuck into. Whether you're looking to become a football agent, understand the inner workings of sports sponsorship, or knowing what gets people ticking through social media, there are so many career episodes available right now under the PitchTALKS Working Sport podcast name. And if you have any feedback, questions on today's episode, make sure to leave us a review on our Apple Podcast page or give us a follow on our social channels. This has been PitchTALKS, the sports career podcast focused on helping you get into sport.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Bringing You the Game by PitchTALKS. For more information on our latest episodes, careers advice, or to even get involved as a guest, get in touch with the team at mitch@pitch-talks.com or send us a message on any of our social platforms. Thanks for tuning in. Bringing you the game. Pitch Talks.
All PitchTalk content is copyright protected.
Pitch Talks.